What's up, guys? Welcome back to Michigan Muckraker. My name is Michelle. Today is October 2nd of 2023. And last week, I'm sure you all heard that Ford paused its battery plant in Marshall, Michigan. And of course, the people that have been fighting this huge mega site that's bigger than Mackinac Island, 3,000 acres, we're excited and we hope that the pause is permanent. But there are four reasons that I can find to why this pause occurred. And, it's probably a combination of all four, but Ford has made an announcement to why, and I'm going to get into all those reasons. Um, and if there's more after you hear those four reasons, please let me know what you think because, of course, I love new ideas and this is a very complex issue. So new ideas are necessary for complex issues. So we're going to talk about Ford and Marshall. We're going to discuss Gotion. They are attempting to still halt Gotion. Of course, we are attempting. But this is Mesa that put in they're suing basically. We're suing Gotion for the Endangered Species Protection Act through that act, rather. So we're going to discuss that. I want to talk to you about Flint, Michigan, and the water there, and the fact that no one is being charged. It's been dropped. No one's held accountable. And yeah, I mean, I'm unfortunately not surprised, but with all of these new EV battery plants that are going to require a massive amount of water and the fact that they could contaminate the water and yet our government doesn't do anything about that. No, again, no one's held accountable. These are issues that we need to be aware of, and it should give us pause. Even if you are for jobs, you should be for keeping your water clean and keeping it there. Let's not drain the Great Lakes, shall we? The other thing I wanted to discuss with you are a couple electric buses that are coming to Michigan. I want to keep my eye out and see how they fare in our winter, because if you've looked into electric batteries at all, you know winter is not good for them and they don't do well. But hey, maybe innovation has taken hold and they'll do better. We'll see. I'm going to keep my eye out. Michigan judge ordered to honor pronouns of parties in court. That's right, pronouns. The truth doesn't matter in the court of law anymore. I suppose we can just lie and make up whatever we want, and they're supposed to honor that. And then 5G. There is a tower going up on top of an elementary school, and the judge cleared it. I don't know why the judge would do such a thing, but we need to talk about 5G. And lastly, I'm going to talk a bit about bricks. So let's jump in and I'll share my screen. The first thing we're going, you know what, I think I might put myself there. First thing we're going to discuss is the celebration that happened after Ford battery plant was paused in Marshall. Again, there are a lot of people that we don't want this huge battery plant in Michigan. Their jobs aren't worth it and they won't be there by 2030. Honestly, automation is going to take hold, which is one of the reasons why the strike is taking place. So the strike, of course, is one of the main reasons why Ford paused its Ford battery plant, or its battery plant. I will get into a flow. Good morning, by the way. Thank you guys for joining me. I hope y'all are well. And I hope that you celebrated the good news and you're going to continue to fight these EV battery plants, especially the fact that we just didn't get a say, right? I mean, that's the main problem. Well, one of the main problems is that none of us got a say in these huge projects. They're being shoved down our throats by our central government. And the NDAs, the secrecy, all that makes it even more suspicious and not wanted. So we want it to be recreational here in Michigan, bike trails and greenhouses, maybe, different recreational businesses would be welcome because that's what fits especially these rural areas. So anyway, let's get into this. Marshall, Michigan. There was real excitement all over our small town when the news came out yesterday, says Marshall resident and grassroots activist Julie Bryant. By the way, this comes out of EDRA of Michigan, Economic Development Responsibility Alliance. And Marjorie Steele is the person who wrote this article. Michigan taxpayers have bankrolled Ford Motor Company for too many years. This is total corporate welfare. The people do not want this monstrosity overtaking our small historic town. Bryant emphasized concerns over both national security in regards to cattle's involvement and the destruction to the environment that's already been taking place. If you've seen the picture, sorry, I'm going to continue. Local and statewide grassroots are hard at work, Bryant says. So yeah, if you've seen the pictures of the Ford site, it is awful. It used to be green, and now it's brown. It's a brown field that a huge building is going to occupy instead of farmland because to save the planet. It's not over yet, folks. Meanwhile, at this morning's Michigan Economic Development Corporation, so this was last Tuesday, I did record that Michigan Strategic Fund Board meeting. They, of course, gave the funds anyway, even though the pause was right the day before. Dissent began to form over funding for Marshall, resulting in the first non-unanimous vote within recent MEDC and MSF board history. Significant debate took place among board members over the proposed additional $65 million SSRP grant funding for Marshall, with concerns ranging from pending litigation on the site's industrial zoning to potential influences of the UAW strike on the Blue Oval's project's feasibility. The Marshall Area Economic Development Alliance's, MEDIA's, attorney was present to address legal concerns. Board member Dan Meyering interrupted Mr. Messer's call for a vote for further debate, and board member Wes Eklund voted no. So thank you, Wes. That was the only reasonable vote, to my estimation. Now, the MSF board did say that this is going to the Economic Development Corporation, MEDIA, and it's not going to Ford. So even if Ford doesn't buy the site, they still want to get 800 more acres attached to that site, and it's for readiness for whatever industry comes there, even if it's not Ford. So that's how they justified still giving the $65 million to the site. That's what they say. But Messer, the one that's in charge of MEDC and the Michigan Strategic Fund, went to Davos with Whitmer. So, he likes, he's a global, I hate saying global, central planner. And so he was like, this is just a pause. We have full faith that it will start back up again. That is what they want. That is not what we want. So they got the money. The site did. And the Right Place CEO, Randy Thelen, was asked by the board to recuse himself. Don Ludwig, who lives near the proposed Mundy Township semiconductor megasite, expressed solidarity for Marshall. You have to love the pushback from local residents, he says. Mundy residents are watching closely. We stand with Marshall and all the communities across Michigan facing unjust development. Corey Feldposh, a resident of Eagle Township, where the MEDC is proposing to build the Semiconductor Michigan Manufacturing Innovation Campus, comments, I find it very disturbing that Ford can enter into such a huge commitment and then abruptly halt the process. Once we give corporations such power to govern our cities and towns, we are very reliant upon them. That's what is worrisome for Eagle Township. What happens if whoever buys and develops here pulls out and leaves, and we are left with destruction that cannot be undone? That is a wonderful question. I actually have an article I want to share with you that just came out of Bridge, Michigan, about all of the sites around Michigan that are polluted because of industry, and nothing was done about it. They just got away with it. Imagine that. It is a win, but the war isn't over, says Shelley Okonanicki. I'm sorry, Shelley. Chairwoman of Stand Up Shiawassee and resident of Shiawassee County, where the MEDC is courting international investors for another EV megasite. The MEDC has become a fourth branch of government, filled with unelected unelected bureaucrats who are taking in our taxpayer dollars and bringing in these Chinese Communist Party companies to set up shop on our soil. When will we understand what we are doing to our beautiful state and our freedoms? Great question. Marjorie Steele, Big Rapids resident and founder of the Economic Development Responsibility Alliance of Michigan, chastised MSF board members during this morning's public comment by citing a tally of estimated water consumption of the MEDC's proposed and existing EV and semiconductor megasites, new lithium mines, and Nestle's water bottling facilities across Michigan, for a grand total of 48 million gallons of water per day being taken from our aquifers, with another 50 million gallons of water are being taken each day from Lake Superior for surrounding industry, and no one has bothered to stop and do the science to see what the cumulative impact of all this water consumption will be. This is out of control, and we Michiganders will not stand for it. We will resist these sites at every step of the way until these megasites are shut down, or the MEDC is shut down, or both. Wouldn't that be lovely if we could shut down the MEDC? I think that would be lovely. Collaboration between grassroots activists across the state continues as Marshall and Big Rapids residents look forward to protest and solidarity together in Marshall this upcoming October 7th. Pretty sure that's Saturday. Yes, Saturday, the 7th. Helpful neighbors can contribute to the Committee for Marshall, not the Megasite's ongoing legal fight against the Blue Oval Megasite at this link right here, and I'll have it down in the description if you would like to donate. So they're still fighting. People in Mecosta County and Green Charter Township still fighting. It's not over till it's over. Ford pauses work on $3.5 billion battery plant in Michigan out of Reuters, September 25th, and this is going to give several of the reasons that has been thrown out there to why they paused. Now, once again, you have the strike. You have an idea that was sent to me through the grassroots movement was that it actually does look awful for Ford's brand, that they're destroying farmland and going after the farmers, basically, and the farmers don't want this, and yet they're still pushing it. Now, that is absolutely a factor to consider. The only thing I doubt is whether they give a crap. And so I would hope they care about their brand image, but if you notice nowadays, for some reason, corporations don't really care about whether or not they lose money by being political. So I'm not sure if that is. I would like to hope that that is one of the reasons why. The other one is the Republicans are still trying to go through the China route. So, we need to investigate whether this is a conflict of interest. If we go to war with China, what does this all mean? That's the Republican angle that they have been going with since the beginning of the grassroots movement starting up and bubbling up to counter this EV push across the state. So those are a few reasons. Of course, like I said, the strike, that is what Ford has said themselves, which we're about to see. They also say that there are citing concerns about its ability to competitively operate the plant at a time when it remains locked in broader contract negotiations. I mean, I guess you could say that's the strike, but it also could be involved with the, what is it called? Inflation Reduction Act, which again is really just a Green New Deal 2.0. It's just called the Inflation Reduction Act, but really it's all about the environment and different industries being boosted by the government, chosen as winners, and other industries chosen as losers. But United Auto Workers blasted Ford, saying the announcement was a shameful, barely veiled threat by Ford to cut jobs. We are simply asking for a just transition to electric vehicles, and Ford is instead doubling down on their race to the bottom. So according to the UAW president, they are doing it as a threat to the workers, which, again, that's associated with the strike, but it's a little bit different of an angle. Personally, I think all of these reasons come into play, but I have no doubt that pausing when the strike was going on is a barely veiled threat. Ford has repeatedly raised its offer to the union in contract talks without securing a deal, while the fate of the battery plant workers has remained a key issue in negotiations with the Detroit Three. We are pausing work and limiting spending on construction on the Marshall Project until we're confident about our ability to competitively operate the plant, Ford said on Monday, declining to say what specific reason triggered the decision, but adding there were a number of considerations. We haven't made any final decisions about the planned investment there. And that does, to me, give some credence to what the locals think, and is a very good point that Ford is known here in Michigan in particular. I mean, Michiganders are Ford lovers on average, obviously not all of them. There are outliers and everything, but on average, Michigan loves Ford. And so going after the farmers in such a way does not look good on them. Anybody that's paying attention, it doesn't look good. President Joe Biden on Tuesday is set to visit Michigan to join UAW picket line in support of striking workers. He did join the picket line, and I do have an article out of the New Yorker about that. It's very, I would say it's odd, but this is 2023, so nothing really is odd anymore. Again, I think the number one fight that I face every day is apathy, personally. It would be so easy just to say screw it all and let it go, and yet I know that's wrong. So I won't do that. But that's what tickles the back of my mind is apathy. Getting back into this, Republicans in Congress have been probing Ford's battery plant plan over concerns it could facilitate the flow of U.S. tax subsidies to China and leave Ford dependent on Chinese technology. So there is another reason. Representative Mike Gallagher, the Republican chair of a House Select Committee on China, said lawmakers were encouraged to see Ford take a crucial first step to reevaluate its deal with cattle. Now Ford needs to call off this deal for good, he added. So the thing with this, it sounds like if Ford doesn't go with cattle, but rather someone else, then the 3,000-acre plant would be okay. And that's not how the locals feel. The locals feel like they don't want an EV battery plant, no matter if it's Chinese connected or not. But the Chinese connection is one of the aspects that they focus on to try to stop it, because when you're fighting Goliath as David, you use, whatever rocks you can pick up and throw at his head, right? Ford in July forecast a full year loss of $4.5 billion on its EV unit, 50% higher than projected earlier this year, and said it was slowing its EV production ramp up. Ford also has said its plans to quadruple sales of gas-electric hybrids over the next 5 years. The industry is watching how new rules around future EV tax credits will be implemented as automakers make investment decisions on producing batteries for the transition to EVs. This always bugs me because, again, public-private partnership, public comes first. Our money, we're taking the risk. They get the rewards and the back end. Once we invest, then they'll invest. But that means that the supply and demand, the free market isn't there, right? Because if there was demand, Ford would want to service that demand and create EVs. But what's happening is our government is actually giving a bunch of our money away to these companies to bribe them to make EVs because they make them at a loss. And only government doesn't care about losing money because they steal our money. They don't actually make any. But private business, they care about being efficient because they need to make money. It used to be you need to make money to survive. Now we bail everybody out, which, again, that just hurts small businesses that are waiting in the wings for that. It's like in the forest. You have a huge tree that's rotting from the inside out. And instead of letting it fall, and then all these other young trees that are just waiting for that sunlight get the sunlight because the rotten tree, huge rotten tree is gone. Instead, our government puts ties on it, props it up. Our government props up the huge rotting tree, and now all of these small businesses that are waiting to grow can't grow because they can't get the sunlight. If the natural process were to happen, then the small business would be able to have a chance. But instead, we have monopolies and, well, really oligopolies, right? Usually there's 3 businesses. I always go to video games for some reason, but Nintendo, Xbox, Sony. But you can pretty much do that with any industry. There's 3 big ones, and everybody else gets scraps, if anything. In 2022, Congress passed $430 billion Inflation Reduction Act, which will bar $7,500 in future consumer EV tax credits if any battery components are manufactured or assembled by a foreign entity of concern. There we go. So Ford is actually waiting to see if they'll get the EV tax credits, because if it's a foreign entity of concern that is helping them build these batteries, then they might not get the tax credits, and so they won't want to do it. Ford has been awaiting guidance to determine if batteries operated by the Marshall plant would run afoul of their requirements. So there you go. That's another huge reason. If you don't get the free money, I'm not doing it. That's how awesome EVs are, right? That's how high the demand is. It had urged the Treasury to take a narrow view of the restriction, warning that an overly expansive interpretation of this provision risks making the clean vehicle credit largely unavailable. Right. So if you say that if China's involvement means no tax credits, well, you're screwed, America, because China has all the batteries. That's what that sentence says to me. Some Michigan Republicans have questioned the $1.7 billion in planned state incentives for the Marshall plant that Ford has said is expected to employ 2,500 workers. Right. So, Biden, Trump, and what's at stake in the UAW strike out of the New Yorker just yesterday. I'm sure you heard that Trump, instead of going to the debate, the second Republican debate, came to Michigan and was talking to the UAW president and other people that were striking. Now, again, the fact that both presidents show up for the first time at a picket line, something to note, and it's just a precursor for what's going to happen all next year. This battle is not going away this year. That's my prediction, of course. I don't have any proof that that's the case, but from where I sit, everything I've read is that this is going to be one of the top 3 issues for the 2024 presidential election. And it will be one of the reasons why Trump wins, in my opinion. Behind the familiar positioning and chaos of the 2024 presidential race, the economy is beginning a slow but profound transition from being based on oil and gas to relying on renewable energy. Nobody asked for this transition. Nobody asked for it. The Biden administration's work to make this change happen in the face of the climate crisis is its most forward-thinking undertaking, and the Inflation Reduction Act, which worked to enroll automakers in the transition, has been its chief legislative accomplishment. The UAW strike is about tangible labor issues, pay, and benefits, but it is also about the emerging electric vehicle industry, which insiders have publicly suggested may need many fewer workers. Ford CEO estimated perhaps 40% fewer. Though some studies have found the new plants won't be less labor intensive, right? They had to add that at the end there, but Ford CEO themselves are saying it'll take 40% less people to make these EV batteries and EV vehicles in general. Electric vehicles. EV production does depend on battery plants, and according to CNN, there are currently 6 operating in the country, only one of which is unionized. Workers at Tesla, suddenly an important competitor, are not unionized either. In May, which, it's funny that they're not unionized when our government subsidizes everything that Elon Musk does, but especially Tesla. It's never been profitable, ever. our government is the only reason why Tesla exists. So I think it's hilarious that pro-union Biden, who gives tons of money to Tesla, is involved in such a way. He looks very anti-union in several instances to me. Good morning, Dragonfly. Hope you're doing well. Hope you had a great weekend. It was beautiful here, by the way. Quick side note, 80 degrees and in the end of September. That's pretty nice. And today, actually, sunny. It's supposed to be 80 degrees and it's October 2nd. I love that. Give me 80 degrees in October anytime. In May, Fain said that the UAW was withholding an endorsement of President Biden over the issue. In a memo, the union declared the EV transition is at serious risk of becoming a race to the bottom. From Mar-a-Lago, Trump, despite the preoccupations of facing 91 criminal charges. I mean, again, this is all so ridiculous. I am not pleased whatsoever with all of these attacks on Trump. And I don't like Trump, but it's just crazy what's going on. All this political stuff is nuts. 91 criminal charges. Some of them is just because he has certain ideas that people don't agree with that he won, even though he conceded by not being at the White House. He still could think that it was stolen from him, and that is legal. That is okay. It's okay for people to think differently, guys. I know you guys know that, but some people don't seem to know that. Here's another prediction for you. 91 criminal charges, all of them are going to be dropped. All of them are going to be dropped, and it's only going to make Trump look like a martyr and the most anti-establishment candidate on the stage. And so doing this helps Trump. That's what I see. Dragonfly says, beautiful at Silver Lake and busy. Oh, man. Silver Lake. Gorgeous up there. One of the parks that are going to get electric vehicles first is that Silver Lake Park. I'm a little jealous that you got to go up there. So his campaign, come back here. 91 criminal charges. Recognize that two things Biden wants: to achieve the green transition and to be the most pro-worker president in U.S. history. We're in tension and ripe for some political entrepreneurship. There is no way to achieve the green transition and be the most pro-worker president in history. The green transition will create more unemployed individuals in the history of the world than ever. Between the green transition and AI, but they go hand in hand. 5G, Internet of Things, all of it is connected. Corey says, have you heard about the FEMA and FCC October 4th emergency alert test? For a half hour, 3 different tests will be sent to everyone's phone. Thank you, Corey. Yes, I have heard that. Backup date is October 11th. I have heard that, and honestly, I do find it concerning. Now, there's tons of conspiracy theories, for lack of a better term. I hate that term because CIA is the one that coined it. But it's a theory that people are conspiring in such a way. So in this case, it does work logically. But that's all kinds of things, that 5G is connected to that emergency test. Another thing is, how in the hell does FEMA have access to every single phone number in the United States and is going to send it to all of us? And yet everything that happened with Maui and, what do you think, Corey? What do you think is going on with this? Is it just a test? The thing that makes what I think, another prediction, another speculation here, that if they sent out a test and then someone takes advantage, some other country, say, or even our own government claiming it's another country, takes advantage and actually attacks us on that day, well, then that would lead to some mass confusion. Is this a test or is it real? I don't know if that's enough to justify doing anything, but people, of course, are connecting 5G with it because of the jab. Again, I don't know how true that conspiracy is. You won't know until it happens, but allegedly the signal will be sent out and people that got the jab will be affected in some way. Who knows how they would be affected, but that's the speculation. I don't know. I don't like it. Thank you for bringing that up because it is important. That is, of course, 2 days from now, so Wednesday the 4th, and then Wednesday the 11th is the backup day. So be prepared for your phone to go off. And you said a half hour, 3 different tests will be sent to everyone's phone. Crazy they have that capability. And we need to try to understand what they're doing. They tell us one thing, we can't believe them. But if you have any theories about what's going on, put them down in the comments, please. I'd love to know what you guys are thinking about that. Let's see. Certain Republicans sensing a shift. One poll suggested that 41% of Republican voters now view unions as a positive force. I don't know too much about unions except for its centralized power, and so it makes me suspicious that it can be corrupted easily. But I've noticed that there's a lot of that flipping going on, right? It used to be the Democrats that were for the labor force, they were for the little guy, and now it seems like it's the Republicans. It's really a weird flip that has occurred that I've noticed, but again, there are a lot of rhinos and there are a lot of Republicans that want big government as well, just in a different way. I'm not for that either. I do not like DeSantis banning mask usage. If I own a company and I want to force people to wear masks, then my business will probably go out of business in Florida, but that would be on me. The government should not be involved. If it's my business and I want to force people to wear masks, then free market will decide if that's okay or not. And in some states it would be okay and in others not. So anything that has to do with big government, I'm against, whether it's Republican or Democrat. It's a positive force. This has not translated into policy, though, and the UAW is skeptical of some of its new admirers. Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri, who visited a UAW picket line in his home state, previously enjoyed a rating of 0% from the union. And ahead of Trump's visit, Fain said, "Every fiber of our union is being poured into fighting the billionaire class and an economy that enriches people like Donald Trump at the expense of the worker." That was enough to draw Biden to join the striking workers in Michigan last Tuesday. No sitting president had ever before stood on a picket line. Not Obama, not Clinton, not FDR, which itself suggests just how rapidly the Washington consensus on labor is changing. Come down here, you can be loyal. I'll just read this whole paragraph, actually. Trump's pro-labor appearance a day later turned out to be an invite-only event at a non-union truck parts manufacturing plant in Montcalm County, hosted by a company's president, which had the effect of bypassing its supposed audience, union workers. A UAW vice president sent an email to a reporter at the Detroit Free Press, which delicately redacted it for publication. Let me be blunt. Donald Trump is coming off as a pompous beep. Nevertheless, Trump found a way to make his point. You can be loyal to American labor, or you can be loyal to the environmental lunatics, he said, but you can't really do both. You can't be loyal to both. It's one or the other. I agree with Trump on that point, because the environmental policies are extremely anti-labor. Of course, it really has to be both, even if Trump's party doesn't yet admit that. At the second Republican debate on Wednesday night, candidates rushed to champion fossil fuel extraction, with Mike Pence calling for the U.S. to unleash its oil and gas resources. This is already happening to some extent since Biden, even as he calls climate change an existential threat, has helped foster a gas boom. How has he helped foster a gas boom? If you're talking about prices being through the roof, it's because of supply and demand. If you have the same amount of demand but less supply, prices go up. Very simple. Still, a drive across the Midwest, and you can see the first landmarks of the new economy. Huge battery plants going up in small town Michigan. Wind turbine blades spinning along ridge lines in Iowa. A solar arrays wedged into highway clover leaves. And yet, as a political cause, this transformation remains curiously under-heralded, hidden beneath the banner of the Inflation Reduction Act, and enacted through a dense set of tax credits. In Michigan, Biden sought to demonstrate that he is on the side of the workers, but the UAW has yet to endorse him. In the general election, he might need to convince its members and the rest of the country that the new economy can still come with a 40% raise. Now, really quick, it actually is more like 60 to 70% because they also want to bring the 40-hour work week down to 32 hours. So with that in mind, they were asking really for a 60% raise. And what do you guys think of that? Do you think a 60% raise is appropriate, or do you think it's asking too much? Despite Ford pause, board approved $65 million for the Marshall site. Now, this is out of Capcom, and it talks about the numbers, which I think are important to wrap our head around, and I really like this article for that reason. The various grants and cash giveaways of taxpayer money to the $3.5 billion project amount to about $1.7 billion. So out of $3.5 billion, we're paying half. If the Ford pause never restarts, just under half. Math was not my strongest. It was always literature, reading. That was always the best for me. Easy peasy. If the Ford pause never restarts, Michigan taxpayers wouldn't be on the hook for the whole thing, but as much as $270 million in taxpayer funds might have been paid out already, according to James Holman, the Mackinac Center's Director of Fiscal Policy. The Michigan Economic Development Corporation granted $120 million to the Marshall Area Economic Development Association for land acquisition. Half of the money was available immediately because they needed to show that they had an agreement with the company. That's $60 million. $60 million given. It blows my mind. Marshall Area Economic Development Association got $120 million for land acquisition. We gave $120 million to bribe them to buy our land. That's the best way I can say it. That's crystal clear and outrageous. It's outrageous that we're doing this. There were also 2 grants worth up to $105 million each, or another $210 million. The first is dependent on hitting spending targets, the second on hitting site preparation goals. The new $65 million grant will come from the MEDC's Strategic Site Readiness Program. It comes on top of $750 million the state previously allotted to prep the site for Dearborn-based automakers plant. $400 million to Medea, and $300 million to the Michigan Department of Transportation. Dragonfly says, my husband works for a municipality, and they no longer are union, but have an attorney now. Both are useless, yeah. And I have a weird feeling about Fane. I tell you what, Dragon, I agree. The fact that he was hired this year, that he's been a union man his whole life. I don't know. I don't know the guy. Maybe he's a great guy, and maybe he does have the workers in mind. But I have an article coming up about how this really hurts the workers more than it hurts anybody else, the strike. It's too weird. And then the right to work was repealed in March as well. And so it kind of set up this momentum for him to do what he's doing, and then Biden going there, it's almost as if they want this to happen. Again, isn't it an excuse because the jobs were already going to go away because of AI and the green energy transition. And so they're covering it up, and now they can blame the strike. They can put the blame on the people. I don't know, but something fishy is going on with this. I believe it. I feel it too. So trust your instincts on that. Something ain't right. Ford itself was granted $630 million in 2024 Michigan budget. Ford was granted $630 million in our budget. Why does Ford need our money? Why don't we get some money from Ford? The $65 million will be granted, excuse me, to the Marshall Area Economic Development Alliance for land acquisition, site studies and preparation, water and wastewater upgrades, road enhancements, professional fees, administration, and other necessary public infrastructure improvements. It's like, yeah, we're paying for the roads to be improved for a company. I have roads all around me that there's potholes that would destroy my car if I hit them. And yet, we need to make sure the roads around Ford are good. Who cares about the people? It's about corporations because public-private partnerships, baby. People don't matter, central government and big business. That's all that matters. Why would the Marshall Alliance need 65 million to ready a site where construction is paused? People close to the project are optimistic that the pause is just that and that work will someday resume. We fully expect Ford will continue to develop the Blue Oval Battery Park, Michigan site, and we need to allow the Ford Motor Company and UAW to continue their negotiations, Quentin Messer Jr., chairman of the Strategic Fund and head of MEDC, told the board. Right. Let's see. Melisande, I hope I'm saying that right, says, oh yeah, they love to put the blame on all the others for what they're doing or planning to do. You are right about that. And Dragonfly minimum wage was raised to $20 an hour in California. By the way, hello, right back to you. I appreciate you hanging out with me. What do you guys think about the Ford pause? What is the main reason? Is it the strike? Is it China? Is it public relations? It looks bad to be plowing down farmers, driving them down. Let me know. All right, so I do have more on the strike. This is mixed in there, and I'm just going to jump into it. Dana Nestle's attack on Line 5 threatens massive energy cost spike. This just came out by Kyle Olson of the Midwesterner on September 29th. I'm going to try to do this more often where I actually say who wrote the article, give them credit where credit is due. I am bad about that. I'm sorry. So this is why energy prices are going to be extremely high potentially if this goes down. So Nestle and Governor Gretchen Whitmer have been attempting to shutter the 5-mile stretch of Line 5 that has spanned the lake bed separating Michigan's upper and lower peninsulas for 70 years without a leak. The dual pipeline transports 540,000 barrels of hydrocarbons daily. My dog just scared me. Whew. Supplying 55% of the state's propane consumption. An anchor strike on one of the pipelines in 2020 prompted Whitmer and Nestle to seek permanent closure of the pipeline. Right. They're just saying that an anchor hit it and that it could lead to catastrophic damages. And obviously, it's not good for an anchor to hit it, but it's never had a leak in 70 years. And beyond that, it's extremely important for us Michiganders to have cheaper energy. I mean, energy prices are higher already than they were 3 years ago, obviously. They just keep getting higher and higher. But winter is coming. And if you shut down this pipeline when winter is coming, then obviously energy prices would go through the roof and people would struggle to pay their bills. We're already struggling to pay our bills. And so raising the price by lowering supply when the demand is actually about to go higher for winter is nuts. It's beyond nuts. It's almost evil. Like, you know what you're doing. You know what you're doing, Dana. Let's see. Dragonfly says on December 1st, 1913, Henry Ford fully implemented his moving assembly line. It was an innovation that would transform not just the auto industry, but industry in general. It reduced the time and labor required to complete a car. Oh, and his workers absolutely hated it. There are many reasons to hate it. Yes. And the assembly line is what we have in schools, right? The more you research education, the more you see how terrible our education system is. Having all the kids at the same age in the same grade, terrible. You learn by interacting with younger and older kids And those skills that you learn by interacting are extremely important. You're not always just going to be around a bunch of people your age. So you need to understand different generations and how to work with them. And you are depriving kids of that by having all of the same age in the same grade. And they sit in an assembly line form, right, in rows, and it's all to get us to be good little drones. And more people are recognizing that, and so new forms of educating are coming out that mitigate those terrible effects. And so it just seems like we are in a great awakening, right? A time of revelations. Now, I'm not saying it is the time of the revelation. I'm saying that things are being revealed, and that's something to consider. Every day I learn something new. The light is shining on the dark corners where there's tons of nasty little spiders. So now I got to get my vacuum and suck those nasty little spiders up because I can't do it any other way. They're scary. Electric vehicles are so much heavier. Yes. They're yes. They're heavy, they're awful in almost every way. And the fact that there's been 2 ships now that have had a bunch of electric vehicles, luxury EVs, that have sunk to the bottom of the ocean, like, where are the environmentalists? That's a lot of chemicals at the bottom of the ocean and batteries and metal and everything else that's affecting the fish and the biodiversity down there, like, it should be a problem that they just randomly start on fire because of salt water. It reacts to salt water. And what about all the people that are in New York right now that have electric vehicles? We need to keep our eye out on what's going on there because of all the flooding that happened. The EVs, I'm sure, are going to do what they did down in Florida, randomly start on fire. They're going to be dangerous. They're just issue after issue. But the problem is the people pushing it know these issues, they don't care. To me, it feels like we are in exactly that time. That's why many are having their lights turned on. You know, I personally feel the same as you. It's just that there's always this counter argument where I'm sure people in World War II felt like it was the time of revelation, but I don't know. I don't know. Like this, again, every day things are being revealed to those who are willing to see. It's a it's a very crazy time to be alive, but a beautiful time to be alive. This is what I think is this is a challenge set forth to me to, kind of like what I should know better before I start quoting things, right? Job is the one that was supposed to sacrifice his son and I don't know. I shouldn't even get into it until I know more. I've been, like I said a couple times now, I've been listening to Exodus, Jordan Peterson, and Dennis Prager, and several other individuals sitting around a table discussing Exodus is so helpful for me, and I recommend to everybody. I mean, it's the best Bible study I've ever found, and and so anyway, I'm sorry I got on a tangent. Let's move over here. GM Ford CEOs blast UAW boss as strikes expand. Those times have come and gone many times, I feel. There have been many resets. Yeah, you know what's up. You know what's up. I agree. Think about a clock. There's different ages, and to end an age, it's kind of like it's a story. You start out a hero's journey, right? And it starts out like, let's get my hand in here. There we go. Like this, like a chart, and then exponential growth, and then there's the ending. And every age has an ending, and then a new age begins and a new society or whatever begins. So yes, everything is cyclical, right? I mean, you have 4 seasons, 4 generations. If you look into the fourth turning, every 80 years a new crisis happens. So there's this miniature cycle, and then there's a smaller cycle, and there's bigger cycle. It's beautiful. This world that has been created for us is absolutely beautiful. It's paradoxical, and I love it. I appreciate this life very much. Even when things get rough, I just thank God every day that I am alive and that, He made all this for us. And again, I'm not trying to be Bible thumpy or anything like that ever on my channel. I come from a place where I called myself an atheist. I didn't act well. I called myself an atheist, and I wasn't happy. And so since 2012 and logic has gotten to me, I feel like I feel like I'm butchering this explanation, and then I'm going to actually just stop. GM Ford CEOs blast UAW boss as strikes expand. GM CEO Mary Barra was furious with Fain. It's clear that there is no real intent to get an agreement. Ford CEO Jim Farley said UAW is holding the deal hostage over battery plants. Farley warned UAW pay hike demands have a devastating impact on our business, adding that the disagreement on wages centers around future electric vehicle battery plants. What's really frustrating is I believe we could have reached a compromise on pay and benefits, but so far the UAW is holding the deal hostage over battery plants, Farley said. He added, keep in mind these battery plants don't exist yet. Fain quickly responded to Farley's comment about the union. I don't know why Jim Farley is lying about the state of negotiations. It could be because he failed to show up for bargaining this week, as he has for most of the past 10 weeks. If he was there, he'd know we gave Ford a comprehensive proposal on Monday and still haven't heard back. Barra repeated much of Farley's criticisms of Fain. It's clear that there is no real intent to get an agreement. It is clear Sean Fain wants to make history for himself, but it can't be to the detriment of our represented team members and the industry. Comments from Farley and Barra came hours after Fain announced expanding strikes at their respective auto plants, while he said Stellantis made meaningful progress on a new 4-year labor contract and would avoid further strikes. UAW currently has 25,000, or about 70% of the union, on strike at the 3 automakers. So, lots going on there. Ford pausing Michigan plant, a barely veiled threat. We've already been over that. Come over here, striking auto workers will only harm their own livelihoods. On Friday, September 15th, 12,700 members of the UAW walked off the job at plants owned by the big 3 automakers, Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis, which owns Chrysler, Jeep, and Ram. The walkout marked the beginning of a series of long-expected targeted strikes aiming to give UAW leverage as it renegotiates contracts with the 3 companies. The strike is grounded in frustration over worker compensation. Union members and their supporters point to high profits and CEO pay at the big 3 and compare them to stagnant wages and rising costs of living among auto workers. They feel like they're being ripped off. And they're right. Like the rest of the working class, auto workers are being ripped off. Decades of interventionism have built an economic system that harms workers while helping the corporate and political classes. The first reason for this is monetary policy. Ever since President Richard Nixon abolished the gold standard in the early 1970s, a handful of bureaucrats at the Federal Reserve have been charged with determining the value of our currency. And those bureaucrats have decided that the dollar should lose value every year. They aim for a decline of 2% annually, but the rate has been higher in recent years. Dollar devaluation is a political choice and it hurts workers. In an unhampered market, money becomes more valuable as societies grow wealthier. Goods become better and more affordable, and money saved grows in value. Under our current inflationist fiat regime, the opposite happens. Savings shrink in value by design. The result is spelled out by this individual's book, The Fiat Standard. The culture of conspicuous mass consumption that pervades our planet today cannot be understood except through the distorted incentives fiat creates around consumption. With the money constantly losing its value, deferring consumption and saving will likely have a negative expected value. Finding the right investments is difficult, requires active management and supervision, and entails risk. The path of least resistance, the path permeating the entire culture of fiat society, is to consume all your income, living paycheck to paycheck. We could see then how monetary policy leads to mass consumption, low savings, and hyper financialization, all at the same time. In fact, one of the most notable examples of the financialization of the economy since the 1970s has been the growth of the big three automakers' financial arms: GM Financial, Ford Credit, and Stellantis Financial Services. In fact, Ryan McMacken highlights by the early 2000s, a majority of GM's profits were coming from its financial operations and not from automobile production. This is one of the huge problems with the world. Huge. It's these millionaires, these young millionaires, they didn't do anything. They didn't create a product or service for the world to make their millions. They speculated, they gambled, they made money off of money, they pushed money, they put a little bit into Bitcoin, so they put money into money, and then they move it here and they move it over there and they move it over there, and now they're millionaires. What did they do for society? This is why if you're a millionaire, I don't care. It doesn't mean a damn thing anymore. Did you actually create a product or service that helps humanity and therefore you deserve being a millionaire? Or did you just make money off of money? Did you lie, cheat, and steal to get your money? So many millionaires are like that. Again, this young money, they didn't do shit to make that money. Not really. So same thing. These guys are making money from money, not from creating a product or service. In other words, the automakers have profited from the very same government policies that devalue their workers' paychecks and savings. But monetary policy is only one part of the story. Governments at all levels restrict the supply of housing by limiting building. That makes housing less affordable. The federal government also bids up demand for healthcare services while restricting the supply of doctors and hospitals, and it shields drug manufacturers from competition. That makes healthcare much more expensive. Meanwhile, Washington's agricultural policy aims to prop up crop prices, which impacts the price of many foods. All this artificially drives up the cost of living. And what you can see here is the root problem is government intervention into a free market. Supply and demand there's a law of economy that was built in. There are rules built in. And when you try to mess with those things, there are consequences. Just let the free market reign, baby. It will resolve issues on its own. Interventionism just creates 10 more problems for every solution that you put in place. That's bad enough for auto workers, but the Biden administration is also trying to force a transition to EVs. For auto workers building engines, transmissions, and exhaust systems, that's a threat to their jobs. And because the ramp up of EV production is driven by politics rather than consumer demand, the transition is set to hurt all workers who rely on cars. This is something I brought up in one of my videos too, is think about all of the departments in colleges, the professors that teach how to build engines, transmission, exhaust systems. So the teaching aspect of it as well. And then think about all of the businesses that sell these items. So it's just so many people are going to be affected by this forced governmental transition to renewable energies. It's unreal. Like I can't even think of all of them. But colleges have absolutely been hijacked. I've been looking into the accreditation system for colleges because Jordan Peterson is actually launching an academy called the Peterson Academy, which is going to try to directly compete with colleges, and it's only $40 a month. But they said they couldn't get accreditation because of all of the climate change regulations. Like, in order to have accreditation, you need to have sustainability in your curriculum. Like every single thing in education needs to have the United Nations Agenda 2030 in it. They don't say that, but that's what's going on. So your college has to do this program, otherwise it won't get accreditation. You won't be able to get accredited, uh, credits. We got yep, sounds like the USSR with their 5-year plans. One messing around with what and where would be planted and stuff. So stupid. Farmers know best. Yeah, it's like saying that the Dutch farmers don't know any better. That these bureaucrats in Brussels and Davos, they actually know better than the farmers themselves. And that's how you have millions of people starve to death. Just like you said in Russia, USSA. I hate saying that, but that's where we're going. And if you look at the errors of Russia, they have absolutely spread. And those are narcissism and nihilism. And again, it's the death of God in our consciousness. That's it all stems from that because, yeah, on a little side tangent, Russia was doing fine with their Orthodox Christianity or Catholicism. Um, German materialism came over and started making younger generations doubt, and all kinds of things were happening very similar to what's happening now here in the United States. And then all of that terrible stuff happened because government took the place. There has to be something at the head of the table. Something or someone has to be at the head of the table. And if it's not God, it's government. Family should be there, but they're destroying the family. Um Monetary policy, yes. Let's see. Considering all that, it is obvious why auto workers are frustrated with their financial situation. But unfortunately, their justified anger has been hijacked by another source of their problems, the UAW. Support for labor unions rests on an economic myth from the mid 18th century. In short, it's the idea that the companies make profits by not paying workers the full value of their labor. Eugen von Bombarick dismantled the socialist exploitation theory 139 years ago when he introduced time into the analysis. Companies pay workers in the present for labor services that may lead to saleable goods in the future. Because of the universal trait of time preference, the certainty of money now is often more appealing than the possibility of more money later, which is why so many people choose to sell their labor services on the job market. Borwerk's site insights are easy to see in auto manufacturing, where workers are paid upfront to help build cars that will be sold later. Still, the flawed idea that profits signify wages, sorry, the flawed idea that profits signify wage theft caught on. And in 1935, auto workers founded the UAW. The present strike speaks to the persistence of this myth. Labor unions often appeal to worker solidarity, but in truth, they epitomize the exact opposite. Because of Murray Rothbard has shown, they can only raise wages for some workers by lowering their wages or eliminating the jobs of other workers. At the big three automakers, this can be seen in the heavy use of temporary and part-time workers who are placed on a lower pay tier, the elimination of which is ironically a core demand of the UAW strike. But this situation is just what's visible. All those who are blocked entirely from the jobs that would be available to them if not for the union remain unseen. America's auto workers are right to be angry about their economic situation, but the restrictionist labor demands of the UAW are a distraction that will, at most, help some auto workers at the expense of others. The real solution lies in ending union practices that unnecessarily pit workers against each other, ending the policies that force companies to produce things consumers don't even want, ending the multitude of government programs and political privileges that artificially raise the cost of living, and ending the monetary system that destroys the value of workers' paychecks and savings while propping up the financial class. Abolish all that, and the benefits will extend far beyond the auto industry. Right. He's calling for a free market, which everybody should be calling for. Why we harp on transparency. Out of Capcom, once again, James David Dixon, out of October 2nd. That's when it was written. Last week, we reported that Senate Bill 271, which would institute a 100% clean energy policy in Michigan by 2035, had gone through 8 drafts since being introduced in April, and none of the drafts were available to the public. This is a Lansing where lobbyists have the best information. Lawmakers get theirs on a need-to-know basis, if at all, and the public gets the scraps that make it into the newspaper. Don't you love scraps? Don't you just love that that's all they throw us? That's just the way Lansing is, you say. Congrats, you're a part of the problem, Jim Chapman. I'm going to call you out because that was something that was said by you at the very beginning. I don't make the rules. You're just playing by them. Well, you're corrupt. And you are a part of the problem. Capcom doesn't harp on transparency to be mean. We just happen to think that citizens should be able to follow the workings of the government to which they pay taxes, right? These people would not be in Lansing schmoozing and meeting up and making all these rules if we didn't pay them. If you disagree, I'd love to know why and what results you'd cite to show that our representatives don't need watchdogs. Lansing is, by the way, a 150-person club, including the governor, lieutenant governor, and the legislators, in which strings are pulled this way and that by 1,500 lobbyists. If that sounds good, we should keep doing what we're doing. But we should not be shocked when corruption emerges from corrupt conditions. This week, a former Michigan House Speaker, Rick Johnson, was sentenced to almost 5 years in prison due to bribe taking as a medical marijuana regulator. If the way Lansing is sounds like a problem, join us in saying so. Demand better from your reps and those running for the job. Remember this day and remember these arguments. 2024 is coming. Candidates will be knocking on your door soon enough. If they don't value transparency, they support a status quo that is opaque. What will you do with this info? All right, Gotion. This is very quick. The Megasites Environmental and Security Alliance, MESA, has served the Chinese Communist Party-linked Gotion Inc. with notice of intent to sue. MESA's legal counsel, Robbie Dube, of the Eklund and Blando law firm, notified Gotion's VP Chuck Thelen along with Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel, U.S. Secretary of the Interior Deb Haaland, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Director Martha Williams, and Michigan Eagle Director Philip Roos in a letter dated September 25th, 2023, of its intent to move forward with litigation. The suit is in accordance with Section 9 of the Endangered Species Act, which allows private citizens to sue anyone that harms, kills, maims, or damages the habitat of an endangered species. The proposed Gotion Gigafactory sits on property containing several endangered species such as bald eagle, Karner bluefly, rusty-patched bumblebee, Dazelle Creek, which runs through the property, and the nearby Muskegon River have threatened or endangered mussels and snapping turtles. The notice also introduces Michigan Environmental Protection Act claims due to dangerous chemicals that Gotion will be utilizing, such as lithium and synthetic graphite, which is significant risk to the unconfined aquifer that runs under the property and therefore would cause contamination to local residents' wells, the wells used by Ice Mountain's bottled water operation, the Muskegon River, and ultimately the Great Lakes. As required by law, Gotion now has 60 days to respond before MESA moves forward with the next step in the legal process. So that is the newest way that we are trying to fight Gotion from being built. I hope it works. And that's all I can do. And a lot of these things is hope. Now, this is a documentary that I found on the Schwartz Creek Mundy Township Megasite Facebook page because somebody that lives in that area, or at least is a part of that Facebook group, said that they were in this documentary, and that got me wondering, what is this all about? It's about regenerative farming. I'm going to show you this really quick. It's 2 minutes, 55 seconds, but what I want, if you are interested, is to demand it at your theater. I don't know which theater you'd want to demand it at. Big Rapids, I don't know if that's even still open. I know Fremont has a cute little theater. regardless, there's none right now in the state of Michigan. There's none being shown. So if you are interested, please demand it at your theater after this video. And yeah, let's check out the.
What I'm about to tell you is a matter of life and death. If the soil dies, we die.
The facts have been proven. Roundup does cause cancer.
If you burrow deeply enough, there is a pipeline of money from the pesticide industry into those universities. They're getting the kind of science that money can buy.
Imagine that. Universities, once again, they are completely captured. Absolutely captured.
Nature is the mother of us all. And if mama ain't happy, we're
But there's a way to save our precious soils. It's called regeneration.
Regeneration is not just restoring the land to the state that we found it at, but actually making it better.
We have added over 96 tons of carbon per acre into our soil. Can we mitigate climate change? Absolutely.
We're going to check the underwear.
Now, obviously, it's coming at a premise that climate change is an issue. I don't agree with that, but if you are trying to counter an idea, or rather give a different solution to a problem that people think exists, that might be a better way of saying it. So some people really 100%, they just know in their mind and heart and soul that what the government says, that humans are causing climate change, is real. So to talk to those people, you acknowledge their belief and then give a different solution to that belief. And that's where I think they're coming from here. I obviously would have to watch the documentary to see.
But
I'm for regenerative farming. I'm for that. Our soil is important. I have a garden, and I know nothing is more important than the sun and the soil. So when they try to block out the sun, it really pisses me off for obviously many reasons. But number one is you're harming our food supply, and we need food to survive, and water.
The conventional soybean field and see if we can tell a difference between the microbial activity.
We've eliminated insecticides, pesticides, herbicides. We are saving upwards of $400 an acre. It works out to be about $2 million a year in savings. That is serious cash.
Of course, I'm for.
I forgot my suit. I feel like I'm underdressed. But if you are the people who can make a change, well, it's high time to finally get regenerative agriculture. Let's prioritize the farmer. Out here in the fields,
All right, so you get an idea of what it's all about. If you are interested, the link once again will be in the description, so you can request that it come to a theater near us or a theater near you. And I like documentaries, and I can't even remember his name right now, but he's Haymitch in Hunger Games. What's his name? If anybody knows who I'm talking about. Oh, let's see. This documentary sounds interesting, but those manner of cultivating the soil are already there for hundreds of years, like permaculture. So exactly, Michelle, feel they're messing up with something there. Right. I mean, I always heard crop rotation too, and we stopped doing crop rotation and we just went to pesticides. So that's one of the reasons why I like the documentary. I'm all for, we need to stop with the chemicals, man. Like, those chemicals are causing more issues than we probably know of. So real quick, call to action: Schwartz Creek, Mundy Township, Friday, 10/6/23 from 2 to 7. And Saturday, 10/7 from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. on the southwest corner of Hill and Linden Roads. People are protesting, holding up yard signs and such to say that we don't want these megasites, basically. So if you are available to go to either of those, please do. And I'm sure you'll meet some wonderful people. October 1st, which we already passed that. Hello. Today, Durand City Council meeting. Tonight, 6:30 to 8. October 4th, stopped a Marshall Megasite protest. October 5th, Mecosta County Planning Commission and the Eagle Township Planning Commission meetings. So, lots going on this week and next. Eagle Township Supervisor candidate Troy Shroud open house is this week, Saturday as well. So, a lot going on Saturday. Now, calculating the water intake really quick. This just gives a rundown of all of the gallons of water that these megasites are going to take up. 48.6 million gallons of water per day. That's with Nestle, the potash plant that's being built, Hemlock semiconductor expansion, Mundy and Eagle Township semiconductor campuses. So we don't really know yet what's going on with that one. Holland and Van Buren for EV expansions, and then of course Big Rapids, Gotion, Marshall, Ford, and Shiawassee County are all 715,000 gallons a day new megasites. So sounds like a lot of water. It is a lot of water. We really want private industries taking all that water and using it to make something we don't even want. With thousands of tainted sites, Michigan Dems, I returned to polluter pay. So, in the span of 5 years, from 1990 to 1995, Michigan whipsawed from passing some of the nation's toughest industrial pollution laws to among the most lenient. Now, amid a recent power shift in Lansing, Democratic legislative leaders are vowing a renewed push this fall for so-called polluter pay legislation that would hold companies more accountable for cleaning up the pollution they created. Irwin told Bridge, Michigan, he will push for more transparency from companies responsible for pollution, stronger regulatory oversight over cleanups, and more funds to address a growing backlog of contaminated sites yet to be remediated. Yeah, I mean, why not try to figure out how to make it a private business? Because again, the government isn't efficient at all, has no reason to be efficient. So throwing more money at government regulators, hello. This type of thing, I don't think that's a solution. That's just me. I obviously think these need to be cleaned up. But how do we incentivize the private market to get into that? That's what we need to think about, in my opinion. How clean is clean enough? The debate has roots dating back to 1990, when state lawmakers passed, at the time, was considered among the nation's most stringent environmental cleanup laws. The law forced more polluters to pay the cost of contamination. Records show that the state collections of private money for cleanup skyrocketed from nothing in 1990 to 18 mil in 1994. Beyond that, Pollock, the former state senator who authored what came to be called the Polluter Pay Law, the threat of future liability scared Michigan industries into operating more cleanly. No, that's not what happens. More regulations means businesses don't really want to come here. That's what more regulations mean. It is never a solution. That is backwards. They shouldn't be prevented from polluting at all. Right. They should be prevented from polluting at all. It was anticipation of costs that changed behaviors, said Pollock, who left the Senate in 1994, that often gets missed in the discussion. But some say the law's strict joint and several liability as unfair to property owners, some of whom could be forced to remove decades-old pollution they didn't cause. The fear of inherited liability began to chill the real estate market in urban areas with the highest density of polluted sites. In turn, developers set their sights on green fields. They were abandoning our core urban areas because they realized the cost of the investment under the current environmental cleanup laws was just impossible, said Ken Sikkema from Wyoming. So At the urging of business groups and urban mayors, Sycamore led an effort to change the law. New standards enacted in 1995 transformed Michigan from among the most stringent pollution cleanup states to the most lenient. Back and forth and back and forth. Do they ever really do anything to help us or do anything good? That's the question. Adding to the challenge, state government has 43 fewer people dedicated to monitoring and rectifying contamination today than 30 years ago, when the list of known polluted sites in Michigan was far smaller. The 1995 law also lessened requirements for those found responsible, tying cleanup thresholds to the land's intended use. A school, for instance, must be left cleaner under the state law than a factory. And polluters can often avoid removal costs if they make sure no one is exposed to the pollution. That might involve, for instance, capping tainted solids under a parking lot rather than removing them, right? So cover it up and then there's no contact. Crazy. Part of the problem is that legislative analysts in the 1990s dramatically underestimated how many contaminated sites exist in Michigan. They estimated there were 2,800 and figured it would take $4.3 billion to clean them all up. Today, the list of contaminated sites has ballooned to 26,000. 26,000 contaminated sites in Michigan, half of which are orphans. How about these EV battery plants go there, clean that shit up, and put that no, actually, I don't want them at all, but why would they go to a green field to contaminate that? Records show the state has spent more than $1.5 billion on contamination cleanup, but officials acknowledge it has barely made a dent in the backlog. Officials at the Michigan State Eagle estimate there are about 7,000 sites with unknown risks and not enough resources to investigate. Getting to all of them would take several billions of dollars plus extra staff. How about that's what our taxpayer dollars get spent on, instead of bribing corporations that make their own money, that should have their own money? We don't get any of their money. Why do they get our money? State funding routinely falls short of that. Far short of that. Yeah, I'd rather spend $1 billion on cleaning up these contaminated sites than $1 billion on Gotion, Marshall, like bribing all these corporations. Any day of the week. I'd rather spend on cleaning up Michigan. Cleanup funding within Eagle's remediation and redevelopment division last year was just under $75 million. Not that it should fall on the taxpayer, because it's the corporations that are poisoning the land. However, if I had to choose, I would give my money to clean up this crap. Even with a boost to $174 million this year, thanks largely to one-time dollars, it will take generations to clear the backlog at current rates of funding. Again, it's all because profit over people, right? If there's no money in it, then it's not worthy of doing something. Yeah. Communities living in the shadow of containment sites complain that cleanup delays stifle redevelopment and perpetuate the greenfield sprawl that architects of Michigan's 1995 cleanup law said they wanted to prevent. At some point, we have to say we're not going to support destroying more land, said Shane Laporte, Community Development Director for the city of Jackson. Oh, Michigan Daffodil, thank you for joining me. Just saw this rally at Lori's Farm, Mesa fundraiser this Wednesday, 6:30 to 7:30. Just messaged the flyer to you. Yes, and I'm pretty sure Vivek Ramaswamy will be there, right? Which is really cool. And yeah, Wednesday, 6:30 to 7:30. I am going to try to go to that if possible, because I would like to meet Vivek Ramaswamy. See, when you actually meet someone, you get the energy presence, you know what I mean? Like when you meet somebody in person, it's different than just seeing them on TV, of course. And so I would like to know what's up with Vivek, because he says all the right things and I want to like him, but there's something that nags at me, and I learned to trust that little nagging feeling a long time ago. So again, I like what he says. And yes, he will. Okay, yeah. Will you be there? Are you going to meet Vivek? And what do you think of Vivek Ramaswamy? All of you. What do you guys think? Eagle officials said they support some reform, including more transparency and regulatory oversight in the cleanup process. Environmentalists want more sweeping efforts, namely a return to stringent liability standards of 1990. The Republican who championed the 1995 changes has another idea. If Michigan truly wants to see contaminated industrial sites revitalized, he said, it should devote as much public money to that effort as it does to other priorities, such as business incentives. My goodness, Sakima said. If you can give Ford Motor Company $1 billion to build a new site out in Marshall, you ought to be able to put another $1 billion into the state cleanup fund. That would go a long way. Now, how about you just take that $1 billion and reallocate it? I don't want to do $2 billion. Ford shouldn't get that $1 billion, period. Michigan Supreme Court won't revive Flint water charges against seven figures. This came out September 20th out of Michigan Radio. The Attorney General's office used an uncommon tool, a one-judge grand jury, to hear evidence and return indictments against 9 people, including former Governor Rick Schneider. But the Supreme Court last year said the process was unconstitutional and it struck down the charges as invalid. Yeah, the Michigan Supreme Court on Wednesday rejected a last-chance effort to revive criminal charges against 7 people in the Flint water scandal, waving away an appeal by prosecutors who have desperately tried to get around a 2022 decision that gutted the case. Yeah, it got hijacked. Managers appointed by Snyder turned the Flint River into a source for Flint city water in 2014, but the water wasn't treated to reduce its corrosive impact on old pipes. As a result, lead contaminated the system for 18 months. Lyon and Wells were charged with involuntary manslaughter. Some experts have attributed a fatal Legionnaire's disease outbreak in 2014 to 2015 to the water switch. They were accused of not warning the public in a timely manner. Indictments were also thrown out against Snyder's former chief of staff, Jared Agin, another key aide, Rich Baird, former Flint managers Gerald Ambrose and Darnell Early, former City Public Works Director Howard Croft, and former health official Nancy Peeler. Schneider acknowledged that the state government botched the water switch, especially regulators who didn't require certain treatments, but his lawyers deny his conduct rose to the level of any crime. Since 2016, the Attorney General's office, under a Republican and now a Democrat, has tried to hold people criminally responsible for Flint's water disaster, but there have been no felony convictions or jail sentences. 7 people pleaded no contest to misdemeanors that were later scrubbed from their records. Separately, the state agreed to pay $600 million as part of a $626 million settlement with residents and property owners who were harmed by lead-tainted water. Most of the money is going to children. Money doesn't mean crap if you don't have your health. Like obviously that will help, but justice needs to be served. Somebody needs to go to jail for this. You have poisoned people and children. You have done serious damage. You have killed people. You need to be held responsible in the court of law. Let me know if I'm wrong down in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts on that. So here we have Pentwater receives 2 electric buses. This just came out. And again, I'm going to keep my eye out and see how these work. The buses were paid for via a grant from the Environmental Protection Agency at a cost of $750,000. The pair of charging station at a cost of $40,000 each were also installed thanks to grant dollars. So taxpayer dollars going to, again, push something we don't really want. This is not a large urban suburban school bringing electric buses to our region. It is a small rural tourism town of Pentwater that is leading the charge to bringing green energy through electric vehicles to our district and region. So keep your eye out on that. If you're near Pentwater, maybe you'll see that electric bus driving down the road. Hopefully, I will hope and pray that it doesn't start on fire because children. Right here, Michigan judges ordered to honor pronouns of parties in court. I'm going to be completely upfront with you. The pronoun thing, there is a truth. And the truth is that there are men and there are women, and there are pronouns to go for each, and the truth matters. Everything else brings confusion, mass confusion. It brings chaos. And the fact that judges are being told they need to agree with a lie. They need to agree with a lie. That's very, 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 very concerning to me. I know that most of the court systems, unfortunately, have been captured. It makes sense, right? If you're evil, you need to get a hold of the court system. But the Michigan Supreme Court on Wednesday ordered all judges to address people in court by the pronouns they use or by other respectful means. We serve the entire public and are required to treat those who come before us with civility and respect. This is Justice Elizabeth Welch. The gender identity of a member of the public is a part of the individual identity regardless of whether others agree or approve. Some transgender, non-binary, or gender fluid people use they, them, and their as a gender-neutral, singular, personal pronoun. That's not how this language works. That's not how English works. And what you're doing is, it's like I want to say I'm a cat, and I'm demanding everybody call me a cat, including the judge. The judge, if you don't call me a cat, and you continue to call me a human being, you're not respecting me, even though the truth is I'm a human being. The rule does not force anyone to violate their beliefs. A rule which kicks in January 1st will still allow judges to avoid pronouns and refer to someone by their role in the case, such as attorney or plaintiff, followed by a last name. Yeah, I mean, you're just treading all over our language. You're just making it harder for us to communicate with one another. That's what's going on. Oh, I'm sorry you have to go. Thanks, Michelle, and all out there. Beautiful week for you. Thank you for hanging out. I will hopefully see you tomorrow. Michelle, I agree with you on this. Being attacked by the left, it's telling. It is. It is very telling. And again, I want to say that I love people. I love the people that are confused, and I think that the best way to help them is to tell them the truth, not to placate to delusions. And so when people say that someone in my life actually said that I was hateful because of my stance on this whole issue, and I say to them and to anybody else that says that, I'm sorry, but no, to me, it is hateful to lie to somebody and to allow them to lie to themselves and mutilate their body. And I hope I don't get banned off of YouTube for this, but the truth is the truth. I love people, and I think that in order to help them, you must tell them the truth, even if it's what they don't want to hear. The truth must prevail. Otherwise, you get hell on earth. You get chaos. So I do it out of love. That is why I do not want bad things to happen to these people. I do not want them to make terrible decisions and later on regret them. I want to try to help them deal with reality. And now I'm done with my little rant. T-Mobile cell tower on top of Wyandotte. I looked it up too, and then I forgot it. Elementary school. Wyandotte. I'm saying that right, guys? Hopefully. The T-Mobile tower is on top of an elementary school, and it could be activated. It could have been activated this last week, and I haven't seen any updates on it, but the judge allowed it. The 5G tower that sits on George Washington Elementary School has been at the center of the controversy for months. Parents and community members have been trying to get it taken off the school. Their efforts haven't been successful, and the tower could be activated as soon as Saturday. It's a big concern to me as one of the residents who live here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, said Kathy Koch? Like Koch brothers? I don't know. She has lived across the street from Washington Elementary School for more than 40 years. She says she believes the T-Mobile tower could be harmful to not only students and teachers, but people who live in the area as well. Nobody should live within a quarter-mile radius of a 5G T-Mobile cell tower. Back in 2018, the Wyandotte Wyandotte. Thank you, Michigan Daffodil. School approved the 5G tower and installation was delayed due to COVID. On Wednesday, a judge ruled in favor of T-Mobile and the tower be activated soon. I have to say from the bottom of my heart that I'm extremely disappointed in the judge's determination that he made yesterday about turning on T-Mobile cell tower. Wyandotte. It always gets worse later on in the video for some reason, and I apologize to the individuals that live in this little community. The school superintendent, James Anderson, who started in June, has recently tried to stop the tower from going live. He said he proposed an alternative location to T-Mobile. In his proposal, the district would fully fund the construction of the tower. This would allow T-Mobile to raise their equipment over 100 feet higher than it currently is placed. The remainder of the original agreement could stay in effect. Anderson says T-Mobile hasn't accepted his offer. I don't know if they thought we were stupid because we quote-unquote live downriver. Yeah. Why does a tower need to be on top of a school? Is that not ridiculous? And why would the judge not listen to concerned parents, especially when there is so much literature out there that says that at the least, we don't know the damages. But you cannot say that there aren't damages. Let's see. This is adverse health effects of 5G mobile network technology under real-life conditions. This came out in 2020. This article identifies adverse effects of non-ionizing, non-visible radiation, hereafter called wireless radiation, reported in the premier biomedical literature. It emphasizes that most of the laboratory experiments conducted to date are not designed to identify the most severe adverse effects reflective of the real-life operating environment in which wireless radiation systems operate. Many experiments do not include pulsing and modulation of the carrier signal. The vast majority do not account for synergistic adverse effects of other toxic stimuli, such as chemical and biological, acting in concert with the wireless radiation. This article also presents evidence that the 5G mobile networking technology will affect not only the skin and eyes, as commonly believed, but will have adverse systemic effects as well. Neither 4G nor 5G have been tested for safety in credible real-life scenarios. Alarmingly, many of the studies conducted in more benign environments show harmful effects from this radiation. Okay, that was all that I highlighted in here. I'll leave it down below. Very good read, but I have several others that will sum it up for us. Well-being dangers of 5G. This is Robert Malone, who, if you don't know, was one of the people that helped create mRNA technologies and has been very vocal about how dangerous this latest experiment has been in the last few years. This is his Substack, and down here, the public should be informed of the health risk of wireless radiation, encouraged to take precautions to minimize exposures, especially for children, pregnant women, and people who are electromagnetically hypersensitive. Many non-human species use Earth's geomagnetic fields for activities such as orientation and seasonal migration, food finding, mating, nest and den building. For example, migratory bird species, honeybees, bats, and fish, and numerous other species sense Earth's magnetic fields with specialized sensory receptors. You're telling me that they won't be affected? Of course they will. Look at this. You must be kidding me. French court orders 4G turn off after 40 cows' deaths. This was 8 June 2022. French farmers won the battle to temporarily turn off 4G antenna after he claimed damages cows' health. The administrative court in Clermont-Ferrand ordered the 2-month switchover because the farmer suspected that it was damaging his herd. Mobile network operator, 3 months, hold on. After the decision, he told the French press that he hoped his cows would be able to recover as soon as possible and called the case ruling a major relief and victory. He claimed there are no medical elements that could otherwise explain this brutal drop in milk production. So he said that since the antenna's installation in July 2021, 200 meters away from his farm, around 40 of his normally 200-strong herd had died, and milk production had decreased by 15 to 20% within days of the antenna being switched on. Now, people that are totally for 5G, they'll just say that it's a coincidence. I mean, that this isn't a real study, that I don't understand how that doesn't give one pause. And then you look over here, this is just a few seconds, but you see
something like the 5G, pulling it apart.
the birds are attacking the 5G tower.
That one over there. Jesus. I don't like it, mate.
Just like wind turbines. It's terrible. It's terrible what we're doing. Go over here. Now, this isn't 5G, but they were putting stride safe on the back of these horses underneath the saddle. And horses were dying. Now, this just goes to show that radiation poisoning or electromagnetic signals have effects that we don't understand. And so putting it on top of a children's school is, again, evil. We need to start calling a spade a spade. Why are you going to allow this to happen? That judge can see all of this literature as easily as I can. What harm is it if you say, no, we'll move the tower somewhere else? Oh, millions of dollars. Millions of dollars. So instead, we're going to choose to save millions of dollars and potentially harm the children. But what about millions of dollars worth of medical bills? Oh, yeah, that's right. They love that. Big industry loves that. So let's see. I want to just give a few details. Beginning on April 29th, and every race and every day thereafter, every horse was fitted with a device they had never worn before. It is a wireless device shaped like an iPhone that fits into the cloth underneath the saddle on the horse's back. Horses also began wearing these devices this spring during morning workouts. Racehorses are among the most finely tuned, exquisitely sensitive creatures on Earth. So what happens when you give them all cell phones to wear during the race? They start dropping dead. They start dropping like, well, horses. I ruined that joke, although I don't think it's a very good joke. StrideSafe's device monitors the horse's movements 2,400 times per second throughout the race, sending 2,400 pulses of radio frequency radiation every second through the body of the horse. It also contains a GPS component that communicates with global positioning satellites. It also communicates with an RFID chip implanted in the left side of every horse's neck, ensuring that the chip also emits radiation through the race. And because every racehorse wears horseshoes made of aluminum, which is one of the best conductors, the frequencies that are conducted from both the StrideSafe device and the RFID chip throughout the horse's body are absorbed and re-radiated by its 4 shoes. Each horse then carries not 1, but 6 continuously radiating antennas throughout each race at Churchill Downs. So, with 14 horses normally competing in each race, there are 84 antennas among animals in close proximity to one another running around the track. On April 29, 2023, horses racing at Churchill Downs began to die during races or suffer such severe injuries during races that they were euthanized. So many horses have died this spring that on June 2nd, it was announced that the spring meet at the Downs would be suspended as of June 10th. Officials at Downhill are panicked because horses racing there have died in much larger numbers this spring than ever before. In 2022, nationwide, about 1.25 deaths occurred for every 1,000 horses starting at the gate. But since April 29th, 2023, 12 deaths have occurred among just 1,600 starts at Churchill Downs, a sudden and unprecedented 8-fold increase in racehorse mortality. Awful. Awful what we're doing to ourselves and to the animals around us, and all in the name of saving the planet. This comes out of the Defender, which is the Children's Health Defense, and I'm pretty sure RFK Jr., who is supposedly going to go independent on October 9th, I believe, which is what, next Tuesday? Next Monday. So in 1 week, we're going to find out if RFK Jr. is going to go independent, since the Democrats are not allowing him to debate. Now, most people would say the incumbent never debates, but yeah, what do you guys think of RFK going independent? He was also talking libertarian. What would you prefer he go to? Do you care at all? Would you vote for RFK Jr.? But before he became a candidate potential, I watched him for his vaccine issues. He has been helping children with vaccine injuries win money in court as an environmental lawyer for quite some time. And so in that respect, I do like to hear what he has to say, and I like that aspect of RFK Jr. Personally, I don't think he would make a great president, but that's just me. WHO's cancer research agency to assess 5G health risks, but not until 2025. Now, again, you hear time and time and time again, 2025. Now, tinfoil hat, put that on. What is going to happen between now and 2025 that is going to make it so it doesn't really matter if they admit that 5G, or at least everybody will know 5G is dangerous? I don't know. I don't like that I constantly see 2025. What's going to happen? The World Health Organization's International Agency for Research in Cancer will participate in a project to assess the health risks of exposure to 5G tech, but critics accuse the agency of ignoring already existing evidence and suggested the results could be tainted by industry partners. Experts on the health risks of exposure to 5G tech told the defender that risk assessments should have been conducted years ago. A risk assessment should have been performed before the 5G rollout and not years after it started. Mona Nilsson, managing director of the Swedish Radiation Protection Foundation, said. Instead, Nilsson said entire populations have for several years been effectively turned into 5G lab rats in a dangerous experiment. According to O'Connor, the whole population will be exposed to untested and unregulated electromagnetic radiation, which will absorb into their bodies and without any public agreement. Too many reports and reviews delay and deny the precautionary approach due to economic interests. Right. Again, money. Money, money, money. It's time for action, said O'Connor, adding that she is deeply concerned about the role that special interests and industry lobbying are playing. It's time to demand accountability for the imposition of this technology in every corner of our lives, and time to demand accountability on part of the individuals who are voting to put this technology in place without a single safety test having been conducted for 5G, as established by U.S. Senator Blumenthal during congressional hearings on 5G, she said. Why is risk communication last on this C-Wave agenda? According to the IARC, the agency plans to play a critical role in the later stages of the project by coordinating a comprehensive evaluation of the project's experimental studies, effectively making it the main arbiter for which scientific studies are considered when determining whether there is scientific evidence of health risks posed by 5G. According to the website, the C-Wave project consists of completing 11 interlinked smaller projects called work packages, initiated at its kickoff meeting and co-design workshop. C-Wave plans to complete 8 work packages, including studies focusing on types of 5G exposure and health outcomes, and then assess the risk. After that, the project will address how to communicate risk to the public. Let's see, come down here. Since then, O'Connor said more human studies and toxicology studies in animals, which demonstrated clear evidence of tumors, have added to the evidence of increased cancer risks. In 2018, the National Toxicology Program, part of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, determined in a $30 million study that there was clear evidence that electromagnetic radiation is associated with cancer and DNA damage. So this is what comes in. This is why people say that the jab and 5G are connected, because unfortunately more stuff has come out about the jab being synthetic mRNA, and that it interacts with DNA. And so if it interacts with DNA and 5G interacts with DNA, what does that mean? Well, we don't know yet, but they know. They've done science experiments. And are they going to do yet another science experiment on the billions of people around the world? You can't put it past them. I mean, they'll do anything, right? They don't care. It's very concerning. And the fact that there's a test going on Wednesday, October 4th, that is a major concern people have. Is it linked with 5G? $30 million, U.S. National Toxicology Program, RF, studies, and the Italian Ramazzini Institute's 10-year research project both found clear evidence of malignant tumors, she said. 2 different institutes, O'Connor emphasized, with laboratories in different countries, totally independent of each other and both producing parallel, consistent findings, reinforces the validity of these groundbreaking animal studies. O'Connor added, an external peer review panel of 11 scientists complemented the methodology of the NTP study and concluded that the results showed clear evidence of carcinogenic activity. Many doctors and scientists are now calling for an urgent upgrade for the classification of RF EMF from 2B to Group 1, known carcinogen, the same category as tobacco. Dr. Hardell, a specialist oncologist and cancer epidemiologist, who provided expert commentary on the NTP study, stated unequivocally the agent is carcinogenic to humans. Moreover, Nilsson said in 2017, scientists warned in the 5G appeal that 5G will lead to a massive increase of exposure to microwave radiation, similar to previous generations, which have already been proven to be harmful, and that the 5G rollout should be halted until the health risks have been investigated. So are you telling me that this judge had no idea about these 2 studies that say that it's a known carcinogen? 5G causes cancer. So, again, ignorance or malevolence. There is no other option. Nilsson added, during the last years of the 5G rollout since late 2019, our measurements of radiation have confirmed that 5G indeed led to a massive increase in exposure in Swedish cities. The first case on health effects from 5G by epidemiologist Lennart Hardell and me showed that a 5G base station within 2 days caused the microwave syndrome in 2 persons living close to the base station. O'Connor noted that a worldwide list of all peer-reviewed scientific studies through May 2020 on human health around mobile phone base stations and cell towers, compiled by Carl Muller and the EM Radiation Research Trust, showed consistent finding of health problems. Out of 33 studies, 32, or 97%, reported health problems. According to C-Wave's website, the project aims to contribute to the scientific basis for health risk assessment of 5G and offer the means for effective health risk communication and results dissemination to all stakeholders, ranging from citizen and national regulators to standardization bodies and the industry. But Nissel told the Defender the project looks like a greenwashing project for the rollout of 5G to the benefit of the major corporate stakeholders. For instance, Nilsson pointed out some of C-Wave's consortia partners, such as Telcom Paris and ITIS, are of concern for potentially receiving sponsor funding from 5G stakeholders. She also noted that IARC's press release included the misleading claim that many exposure perimeters of 5G are similar to those of 2G to 4G. But we know that 5G has already led to a massive exposure increase compared to previous generations, according to the measurements performed so far during the 5G rollout. Now, years into the 5G rollout, she said exposure levels exceed 1 million microwatts per square meter in peak values, which is far above what is known to cause harmful effects in terms of sleep, disturbances, headache, dizziness, tinnitus, heart arrhythmia, and fatigue. I swear, That's one of the reasons why my dad gets headache and dizziness and balance problems. What is that called? Drawing a blank. But radiation affects different people in different ways. My mom isn't affected, but my dad is. However, that IARC is unfortunately no longer a guarantee for such objectivity. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is by far the largest single voluntary funder of the IARC, and such funding probably comes with strings attached. Yes. Further, IARC's head of the radiation department, Schultz, is a well-known risk denier, in spite of growing evidence to the contrary, who has produced a seriously biased report for the EU Commission and flawed studies on brain tumor risks from cell phones funded by telecom companies such as Danish Cohort and the Cephallo study. IARC Director Widerpass recently revealed that a new assessment of the evidence linking RF radiation to cancer would likely take place in early 2024, and that a formal decision could come within a few months. This individual didn't suggest that the new assessment would reaffirm IARC's previous classification of RF as a possible human carcinogen. Rather, according to Microwave News, she made clear that the RF cancer risk might instead be downgraded by the IARC and the current classification could be removed. So, with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation involved and basically regulatory capture, that is how you have a tower that causes cancer on top of an elementary school. Fact check, hundreds of dead birds on ship deck have baselessly been linked to 5G radiation. So this is just another example of 5G. Do you guys remember a couple of years ago when they were talking about just huge groups of birds dying? We didn't know why. If a tower's turned on, you won't see why, but they're being zapped out of the sky. Potentially. Now, one thing I wanted to share. Wuhan, China in 2019 turned on their 5G towers in October, the end of October. This was 2019, 10/31. Consumer tries on a 5G mobile phone at a business October 31st, 2019. Chinese major telecom operators announced Thursday the launch of commercial 5G applications during the opening ceremony of PT Expo China 2019 Beijing. Whoops. Get out of here. And that same time, the 2019 military war games took place where all of the nations, I think 193 nations, were in Wuhan. All of the leaders of the world were in Wuhan, China, right before 5G got turned on, and you know what happened in Wuhan after that. I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying that these things are weird to me, okay? I don't know the truth, but when they say that it's a lab leak, that is definitely more possible than just somebody ate a bat and now we have disease. No. We are absolutely creating bioweapons in the lab. But whether or not that's what was going on, we don't know. And that's all I'm going to say about that. What do you guys think about the military war games and all the leaders of the world right before COVID hit? They were all together. And Wuhan, China was the first city in the world to turn on 5G in October of 2019. And then one more thing, if I type in PCR creator, who created the PCR test? Look at that. He died in August of 2019. And what he would say is the PCR test is being used incorrectly by Fauci, and that was in the 70s, if you look into him. So I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying, except for 5G is dangerous. I do know that. And studies have been done. Let me put myself back up here. Studies have been done that prove that 5G is dangerous, and yet we are rolling out 5G more and more frequently. I'm going to keep my eye out on the 5G tower on top of that elementary school, but I remember hearing, and I should have tried to find the article itself, about a few years ago, tops, tons of kids got cancer. Let me see if I can find it really quick. 5G tower. This was in 2019. So now 5G towers here and there were definitely on, but I'm talking about Wuhan, China, the whole city had 5G turned on. That's the difference. Now this right here, after several childhood cancer cases at one school, parents questioned radiation from cell tower, and this was April 4th of 2019. So we're here now 4 years later, and we're going to do the same thing to these children. Sprint shut down a cell phone tower on the campus of a California elementary school after some parents said it may be linked to several recent cases of childhood cancer. Let me bring this back up. You can see here. This is CBS News on April 4th of 2019. And this poor kid is being destroyed by cancer, and Sprint shut down the cell tower. So, there are links. And you don't, in some ways, you don't need to have some kind of scientific study, because science can be bought and paid for. When you're a parent, right? And you know that your kid was fine before tower, kid not fine after tower. Kid was fine before I got the 18-month shots, but now after, not so fine. And so what you're doing when you say that, let's say, some jabs don't cause autism, you're saying that a mom who knew their child at 2 years old, who knew how they were walking, talking, acting, were just fine, and now they're not. And the only variable that's different is that jab. You're denying reality. That's the parent's reality, that's the child's reality, and I don't think you need a scientific study when you have such a case. And the same thing is here. Now, of course, go ahead and do your scientific study, but not all of them can be trusted, and this can be. It's pretty obvious. If one variable is different, and now you're seeing all of these results from this one after this one variable change, why wouldn't you consider that variable? Those families at Western Elementary School claim the tower could have exposed their kids to harmful radiation. Sprint said the tower is safe and is operated well below federal safety limits, but the company turned it off anyway and plans to move it to a new location. My son missed growing up with his friends. My son lost all of his hair, Prime said, choking up with emotion. It's not something that I wish on anybody, to watch their child go through what our children have gone through. 5 months later, Kyle's friend and classmate developed brain cancer. 14 hours to get the tumor out, and he had 5 weeks of inpatient rehabilitation. He had to learn to walk, talk, eat, everything all over again. This is why those parents were fighting. And the fact that the judge said, screw you to the parents, turn it on anyway, that judge should be fired. That judge should be fired. Not trustworthy. 2 more kids at the school were diagnosed this year. At what point are you saying we got to take a closer look at the school here? Charter Evans asked. The moment that I found out that Mason had been diagnosed, it popped into my mind that something was not okay. Moms believe the recent increase in cancer cases could be caused by radiation from radio frequency or RF waves coming from the cell tower. It doesn't even say 5G. It might not even be 5G. It could just be radiation from a freaking cell tower. And children being more susceptible, pregnant women being more susceptible, animals being susceptible. It is classified as a possible carcinogenic. That tells us there's some evidence out there. We're not naive to that fact that there could be other components out there, other environmental influences, but the bottom line that we feel in regards to the tower is it doesn't belong there if there's any indication that it's unsafe. So, this isn't the first time it's happened. Unfortunately, I don't think it'll be the last, because some people don't care about other people. That judge's kids aren't going to the school, so who cares, right? It's not my kids going to the school. My heart goes out to all of those people and all those kids. Do not send your kid back to that school. That's how you get what you want done, because that school needs kids inside of it in order to get funding. I'm sure with No Child Left Behind, there's all kinds of different regulations. You need a certain amount of people and a certain amount of kids in your school. Pull your kid out of that school, send them to a new one, do whatever it takes. That's my advice. And then hurt the school. Force them to take it down. We will not send our kids to the school until you take it down. Let me know if you have a different solution in mind or what your thoughts are on 5G at all. And again, I said things that were speculation in here. I always try to point those out. I definitely don't have all the answers, of course. Nobody does. But I have done a lot of research in a lot of different areas, and so I like to share my thoughts with you, just maybe to get some new ideas forming that you could share with me. Because again, I love updating my software. I love to think, and I know you do too. That's why you're here. So thank you guys for hanging out. I will be on tomorrow at 10 a.m. and I will be talking about bricks. I wanted to talk about it today, but these other stories were the most important. So thank you again. Faith over fear and strength in numbers. I love you guys. I'll see you tomorrow.